So wait, is it that demand drives supply, or is it that supply drives demand? It's very much both. And it's really critical to get that, of course, originally demand drives supply. More people want something and supply steps up. But then you have a real source of supply and you want to manufacture, you want to protect the demand because otherwise your business goes out, and maybe manufacture more demand. And that looks like marketing, that looks like whatever to create manufactured demand. So supply is driving demand, demand is driving supply, and you can get feedback loops that move in the wrong direction, right? Move in the direction of society as a whole getting worse. Mm-hmm. And similarly, we have dynamics where, this very much just addressed one of the core differences between what the rational left-right argument has largely been about. Do individuals create the whole, so you want to optimize for the sovereignty of the individuals, or are the individuals affected by the whole, so you want to make good social systems that make good individuals? And it's very much both. Mm-hmm. And so you want to make good educational systems, good economic systems that condition better people. You also want to make more sovereign people that lead to better whole systems. But when we start thinking about these feedback loops, and the same is true with if someone is in an economic system that's causing certain kinds of stress and certain kinds of behavior, does that affect their brain and their health? Yes. But if we also are, does what they're doing with their diet and with their physicality that's affecting their brain and health then affect the decisions that they make in the world? Yes, it's very much both. And so mind-brain interface is a classic one, like supply and demand, like individual and collective. And to really get the basins of attraction right, we have to not think about either, or we have to think about the synergies and the feedback loops.
Yeah, this reminds me actually of what I noticed, and I hadn't expected to be the case, but I noticed that there was a reasonably common misconception coming back from people about Neurohacker, which was because we had specifically focused on the physiological body-brain piece of the equation, that somehow we were also collapsing the entire space down to just that one thing, mm-hmm. right? So that we're saying, hey, this is the elixir of all good things, and just do this and everything will be okay. When in point of fact, of course, obviously that can't be the case, that every single component of all behavioral, interpersonal, social, cognitive, and many, many different kinds of biochemical characteristics are all necessary to achieve well-being. You have to learn how to eat right. You have to learn how to engage in the various kinds of mindfulness and or physical practices that are appropriate to you to do well. You have to actually have self-awareness to know how to answer the question of what's appropriate to you. I mean, these are all, it's actually, I think this creates the highest degree of optimism in the context of the scope of the problems we're trying to deal with, which is that the core answers to all the problems end up actually being very similar. Meaning that, yep, you want to solve a problem around health, you want to solve a problem around education, you want to solve a problem around economy, you want to solve a problem around war. First and foremost, always already bring it all the way back down to core capacities, because you can't respond to any of them unless you have them. And if you do have them, your ability to respond to all of them basically just becomes fungible. They're more or less domain in specific. And then there was actually something that came to me as you were describing as you were talking a few moments ago, that I thought in the past that I thought might be very interesting to share. It's stated in an evolutionary language. So, in traditional evolution, you have an organism, and you have the landscape or the ecosystem in which that organism is existing. And the basic idea is that the organism is striving to be fit, meaning it had to compete for scarce resources, which may be its own body, against predators, and be able to reproduce. And one of the interesting things that exists in an organism's portfolio of actions is a concept called niche production. Right? So if you happen to be, let's say, really, really good at thriving in the swamp, if you have the capacity to turn more of the world into swamp, that's to your local advantage. But of course, it turns out that there's a problem, that if you become so capable of constraining and controlling your environment that you lose your individual adaptive capacity, then if and when something happens that pushes the environment out of your control, so the swamp turns into desert, you're just dead. Right? So there's a very interesting balance between niche construction and intrinsic adaptive capacity. But there's actually even a higher order synthesis between those two, which we may actually just be, we humans may just be uniquely entering to the possibility of perceiving and doing, and in fact may actually be necessary that we do it, which is if you can come to the point where you can actually have full responsibility for your individual well-being and for the enduring well-being of the niche in which you live. And now, as an organism, you are no longer evolving in a niche. You and your niche are in fact co-evolving, such that the integrity between the two is fully maintained, meaning that your niche does better the better you do, and you do better the better your niche does. That has an endurance characteristic that cannot be achieved through any other evolutionary strategy.